Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. This is solo. Can everybody hear me okay with this? Okay. Shabbat Shalom. So we're going to talk a little about Parashah, Jethro. Now we know we've heard from the readings that we get the Torah. We know there's fire, there's shofar, there's a lot going on. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that I drew from this Parashah. Of course, as always, my disclaimer is I exhort you to read yourself because Torah tends to speak to you very individually. And you might glean some other pearls that I didn't glean, right? I want to start with some ancient Near East texts that I encountered. And these, I think, will help us understand what Hashem was asking Bnei Israel to leave behind. We have to understand that during the time, and even today, there are many gods, right? Little g, there are many gods. And the nations had several. And Bnei Israel, although they had separated and dedicated themselves to Hashem, the one true God, they were very familiar. So they were being asked, leave behind all of this. No, come into covenant with me. I want to start with this text. It's writings. You could find these in a book called The Ancient Near East Texts Relating to the Old Testament. It's edited by James B. Pritchard. And it contains myths and epics and legends. They give us an idea of the nature of the gods that the nations worshipped during the time that the Torah was given to Israel, around 1312 BC. I'm reading a little bit of papyrus, the Turin. It's called The God and His Unknown Name of Power. This was published by F. Rossi and W. Pleat. This text is ascribed to Lower Egypt, and it's dated to the 19th dynasty, so about 1350 to 1200 BC. The Turin text tells us how the supreme god Re had many names, one of which was hidden and was his source of supremacy. The goddess Isis plotted to learn his name to secure power for herself. For this purpose, she employed the venom of a scorpion against Re. The text came to be employed later on as a way of conjuring against such bites. And it starts as follows. The spell of the divine God, who came into being by himself, who made heaven, earth, water, the breath of life, fire, gods, men, small and large cattle, creeping things, birds and fishes, the king of men and gods at one time, for whom the limits go beyond the years, abounding in names unknown to that God and unknown to this God. Now Isis was a clever woman. Her heart was craftier than a million men. She was choicer than a million gods, and she was more discerning than a million of the noble dead. There was nothing which she did not know in heaven and earth, like Re, who made the content of the earth. The goddess proposed in her heart that she was going to learn the hidden name of Re. Now we have to remember that during this time, that name had power, and she wanted that supremacy. Isis watched as Re entered his chambers and sat on his throne. When Re spat on the ground, Isis took the spit and kneaded it together with the earth it was on, and she built it up into a scorpion. She placed the scorpion at the crossroads, which the great god used to travel throughout his two lands. When Re and the other gods traveled the road, the scorpion bit him. The venom scorched like fire, and the noise of his majesty reached the heavens. Re could not tell the gods what had happened. The poison took possession of his flesh, as the Nile takes possession of the land after it. When the great god was composed, he cried out, "Come to me, those who came into being in my body, gods who came forth from me, that I may make known to you what has happened. Something painful has stabbed me, My heart does not recognize it. My eyes have not seen it, and my hand did not make it. I have not tasted pain like this. I am a great one, the son of a great one. My father thought out my name. I am abounding in names and abounding in forms. My forms exist as every god. Let the children of the gods be brought to me, those who know magic spells, whose wisdom reaches the heavens. So the children came, but Isis came with her skill and said, what is it, my divine father? Did a snake stab weakness into you? Did one of your children rise against you? I shall make it retreat. Tell me your name, my divine father, for when I recite your name, you will live. Re responds, I am he who made heaven and earth, who knotted together the mountains and created what is thereon. I am he who made the waters so that the heavenly cow might come into being. I am he who made the heaven and the two horizons, so that the soul of the gods might be placed therein. I am he who opened his eyes so that light may come into being, who closed his eyes so that darkness may come into being, the one whose command makes the Nile flow, but whose name the gods have not learned. I am he who made the hours so that days might come into being. I am he who opened the year and created the river. I am Kipri in the morning, Re at noon, and Atum, who is in the evening. But the poison did not withdraw from his body, and the great God did not recover. And then Isis said to Re, your name is not among those which you told me. If you tell me, the poison will come forth, for a person whose name is pronounced lives. Then Re said, let your ears be given to me, my daughter Isis, that my name may come forth from my body into your body. The most divine among gods concealed it. The great God divulged his name to Isis. Then Isis said, flow forth, scorpion venom. Come forth from Re, O eye of Horus. Come forth from the burning God at my spell. Come upon the ground, mighty poison. Behold, the great God has divulged his name, and Re is living. The poison is dead throughout the speech of Isis the Great, the mistress of the gods, who knows Re by his own name. And this is how Isis secured power and obtained supremacy that still has influence over humanity today. The Israelites were exposed to many gods, many Egyptian gods, such as Isis, Re, Atum, the creator god, Osiris, the death and resurrection god, Hesat, a maternal cow, and others. Now that they have been freed from their bondage in Egypt, they have chosen to dedicate themselves to Hashem, the God of creation, the sovereign of the universe. In Parashah Yitro, Moshe recounts all that Hashem has done for Bnei Israel to his father-in-law Jethro. Moshe gave testimony of Hashem's loving kindness, something that we suspect from this reading that Bnei Israel, nor Egyptians, and many other nations may not have experienced, since the gods, little g, were most of the time trying to gain power from each other and trying to plot deceit, as we heard in the story. But Moshe gave a testimony, and he exalted the sovereign of the universe, and as a result, Yitro believed. Our sages say that Jethro may have converted at this time. Jethro was a Midian priest, a pagan. But in Parashat Yitro, after this testimony, he blesses Hashem. And this is what he says. It says in Torah, Vayomer Yitro Baruch Hashem, Asher Hitzil etem miyad Mitzrayim, miyad Paro, Asher Hitzil et ha'am Tachat Yad Mitzrayim. Ata Yadati Ki Gadol Hashem Mikol Ha'elohim. Blessed be Hashem, Jethro said, who delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh, and who delivered the people from under the hands of the Egyptian. Now I know that Hashem is greater than all gods. Yes. I found that to be a very, very impressive. It teaches us that sometimes it just takes us seeing, us expressing or giving testimony of the blessings that we face when we're going through our trials, our exodus from Egypt, our hard moments. And that kind of testimony can turn someone else around, can change and impact someone's life. So why were these events so impressive? In the ancient Near East, it was believed that there were many gods. And while Moshe had devoted himself exclusively to Hashem, and knew that Hashem was the one true God, greater than any other, his father-in-law did not know Hashem. And it was Moshe who revealed the truth to the Midian priest. The gods that the ancients knew are still around, and people, knowingly or unknowingly, may still worship them. In Parashah Yitro, Hashem gives the Israelites the Torah, and the first utterance is, I am Hashem your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods beside me. Hashem's commands fidelity as the Israelites' only God. And this was unique, as we know, in the Near East, as it shows in the text that I read. But it also reveals that there was a very tolerant religious environment among the nations. At least that's what the text that we read reveals. The gods didn't mind the worship of their peers as long as their own needs were not neglected. The sovereign of the universe will not share his glory with any other God. He is a jealous God. In God, Torah, and Israel, Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, and I want to read this for you. It's a little parable. When God gives the Torah, it's as if he gives of himself. Consider this parable. Once there was a king who had an only daughter, whom another king married. When the latter wished to return to his country and take his wife with him, the father said, my daughter, whom I have given you in marriage, is my only child. My love for her is great. I cannot part from her. Yet I cannot ask you not to take her into your realm. It is her proper home now. Permit me this one request. To whatever distant place you take her now to live, always have a chamber for me that I may dwell with you and with her. For I can never consider really leaving my daughter. And this is what God said to Israel when he gave Torah. I have given you a Torah from which I cannot really part. I cannot tell you not to receive it in love, yet I request only this. Wherever you go with it, make a house for me where I may sojourn. As it is written, let them make me a sanctuary so I may dwell among them. That's in Exodus 25:8. Parashah Jethro records the moment in which the sovereign of the universe, our creator, entered into covenant with Bnei Israel. This was a covenant unlike the Noahide or Abrahamic covenants. This time Hashem wanted this covenant to be mutually accepted, reciprocal. This covenant is a marriage, is a relationship of exclusivity. For your maker is your husband, Adonai Sebaot is his name. Isaiah 54:5. Now then, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the peoples. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That's Exodus 19:5-6. All those assembled answered as one, saying, all that Hashem has spoken we will do. Moshe went and repeated to the people all the commands of Hashem and all the rules, and all the people answered with one voice, saying, all the things that Hashem has commanded we will do. That's Exodus 24:3 and 19:8. Then he, Moshe, took the record of the covenant and read it out loud to the people, and they said, all that Hashem has spoken we will faithfully do. Exodus 24:7. Bnei Israel joined in covenant with Hashem. They entered into a marriage, a relationship of exclusivity. I think this is very important to consider, because even today, people do not see a covenant as what it is. Some may think it's more like a contract. A contract is a position, a situation in which one person is gaining something and the other is gaining something. And that's not what this covenant was. And As everyone knows, Malka loves parables and she loves stories. So I have to read this one more for you. And it's, you can find it on Chabad. It's called The Woman Who Didn't Want to Get Divorced. There was a couple who loved each other dearly, but they had not been blessed with children. The emptiness of their home proved unbearable, and after 10 years of waiting, they came before their rabbi and asked to be granted a divorce. After listening carefully to their story, the rabbi replied thoughtfully, "Just as your union began with feasting and drinking, let your parting of ways be similarly celebrated." With mixed emotions, the couple prepared a feast for the last day of their marriage. But this was a private feast. It was just for them. At the meal, the wise woman poured cup after cup of wine for her husband. As his mood gradually lifted, he said to her, "My beloved, look around our house. Is there any precious item here that you would like? Please choose a keepsake and take it with you to your father's house, where you will once again be living." And the wife responded, "Anything, my love?" To which her husband said yes. She asked one more time, "Don't become upset with me, but I want to know, is there anything that you're denying me? Are you sure I could take anything?" And her husband said yes. She asked one last time as she served her husband another cup of wine, "My love, are you certain that I can take anything? You will not withhold anything from me?" And her husband smiled and said, "I will not withhold anything from you. Yes, you can take anything you want. Take the best. Take what your heart most desires." The wife waited after her husband fell into a deep sleep, and she called the servants and said, "Quick, load him into my car and drive us to my father's house." When the alcohol wore off, the husband woke up from his stupor. He said, "Where am I?" He called out to his wife, "What am I doing here?" And his wife replied, "I did exactly what you told me. You instructed me to take the best thing from your house with me to my parents' home. And there is nothing that I find more precious than you." I love this story. I love this. This, to me, reflects how Hashem feels about us. He will take us wherever, He will go with us wherever we go, so long as we're in that covenant. The couple once again approached the rabbi, and he prayed for them, and they were blessed with children. In our parable, the wife understood that marriage is not a contract where two people come together, each looking out for their self-interest. Marriage is a covenant, and in a covenant, two people come together in a bond of loyalty and trust to do together what neither can achieve alone. It isn't an exchange, it's a moral commitment. Hashem will not divorce Israel because God is not a man who lies, or a son of man who changes his mind. Numbers 23:19. For I, the Lord, do not change. Malachi 3:6. He honors his covenants, and he will not defile himself with a divorce. Why did Hashem want to enter into covenant with Bnei Israel? And these, of course, are not the real answers. These are what I believe are the answers. Covenants are about identity and community. They're not about me or us. They transform. And I think the best answer that I've read so far came from Rabbi Sachs of blessed memory, who once wrote that if you find yourself in a situation of conflict that threatens to break something apart, framing a covenant will keep people together. There are certain things that we can do together that none of us can do alone. But one may ask, what is there that God cannot do alone? And the answer, given the theology of the Hebrew Bible, is to live within the human heart. That requires our free agreement. We have to give that invitation. We have to agree to that. I also believe that Hashem wanted to enter into covenant with Bnei Israel for the future, for the children, for the remnants. Forging a covenant with Bnei Israel would mean that those who hold true to it will teach it diligently to our children, to their children. And I want to read this from Canticles, from Rabbah 1:4. When the children of Israel stood at Mount Sinai to receive divine revelation, the Holy One, blessed be He, said to them, "Bring me good guarantors, that you will keep my revelation, and then I will give it to you." And Israel replied, "Sovereign of the universe, our ancestors will be our guarantors." And God replied, "Your guarantors need guarantors themselves, for they have not been without fault." And Israel answered, "Our prophets will be our guarantors." And God replied, "They also have not been without fault." Then the Israelites said, "Our children will be our guarantors." To which God replied, "In truth, those are good guarantors. For their sake, I will give it to you." And you can read that on Canticles Rabbah 1:4. Why was the Torah given in the wilderness? Why? When I searched around for this answer, of course, I encountered many different responses from the sages and the commentaries. One that I thought made a lot of sense can be read in Tractate Bakodesh 1:18-20, and it says, "The Torah was given openly in a public place, for were it given in Eretz Israel, they could say to the nations of the world, 'You have no portion in it.' But it was given openly in a public space, in a public place, and all who want it may come and take it." There was another thought, and I interviewed a few people. Not so reputable, right? One of them was my teenage son. So his response was, "Hashem, He's the King of Kings. You could give the Torah in a palace, give everybody filet mignon, some caviar, some champagne." I told them, "What do you know about champagne? You're only a teenager." But the truth is, had Hashem given the Torah in a palace, in an Aramon, during a beautiful feast, everyone would have said yes. Everyone would have said yes. Because it would have almost implied that we will not have hardship, that we wouldn't have trouble, that we wouldn't have to fight to keep and to be and to honor it, that we wouldn't have to put work into it. But Hashem's decision made a statement. Will you stand with me and face the adversities of the wilderness? Will you remain true to me and our covenant throughout your walk through the wilderness? Perhaps the sovereign of the universe chose to give the Torah in the wilderness because it is in that rough, hostile terrain that we're tested and strengthened. In the wilderness, we are vulnerable, and the materialistic things of this world buy us nothing. As we face adversity and overcome these elements, we learn to lean and trust in Hashem. When we embrace the truth that He is all we need to survive, we form a deep spiritual connection that builds us up into the person that He wants us to be, and we form an eternal bond. This covenant is a marriage between Hashem and Israel. Perhaps this is why the Torah was given in the wilderness. It's a marriage, and after all, marriages that will last, marriages that truly stay together, usually do encounter wilderness and trouble and hardship and storms, and sometimes some people sadly walk away from that and do not keep true to the covenant. But those who do stay strengthen their marriage. The kala and the chatan, they need the time to be with each other. The bride and the groom, they need that time together and to focus on each other and only each other without any distraction. A marriage that endures the wilderness will endure and last forever. Parashah Jethro speaks to the giving of the Torah, but there's much more to it. For those who are not in covenant with Hashem, it may be seen as an invitation. For those who are in covenant, it may be a renewal of vows or an invitation to reflect. And there's some questions that I considered while I read this Parashah. Are we worshiping the one true God? Or are we worshiping the gods of the ancient Near East? Do we say yes to Hashem's covenant and embrace the Torah? Are we doing that? Are our actions, is our life saying that? It's not so much what comes out of your mouth, because it's easy to say things. It's our actions that matters. The first 5 utterances teach us how to behave towards Hashem. The next 5 teach us how to behave towards each other. Is it possible for someone to be faithful to a God that they do not see when they cannot be faithful to their husband or their wife? which they do see, when they cannot honor their father or their mother. Parashah Jethro calls us to reflect and take accountability for our actions and to think about Hashem and his invitation and his covenant. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.